Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our Build Your Career webinar series. My name is Michelle Fawn. I manage our education and professional certification products and services here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we host. Yes?
You didn't hit the start button.
I did.
Flashing on my screen.
Oh, it's on my side. It's starting now.
Okay.
So our topics covered here include communication, presentation skills, interviewing tips, personal branding, effective writing tips, and improving your outside-the-box thinking, and more. Before we get started, I would like to address some housekeeping tasks. The recording of this webinar has started. You can ask any questions in the Q&A panel. Our speaker, Elsa, will answer as many questions as she can following her presentation. You will receive an email with instructions to access both this presentation slide and recording on demand before the end of today. Today's webinar is on Solution Thinking 101. Solution thinking is a thinking process, protocol of methodology that bridges the gap between coming up with solution-oriented ideas on our own and coming up with the solution-oriented ideas with all possible inputs considered. By setting aside what we think we know about the challenges in front of us and instead incorporating all possible inputs, a whole new world of options and the solutions becomes available. Solutions thinking is that process where all possible inputs are discovered. Joining us today is Elsa Velasco-Paul, co-founder and creator of the M&E Group, a marketing and consulting firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma since 1997. Elsa has served as the International CX Manager for the global company, the Crosby Group. She also trained corporations both in person and in a webinar formats on many different subjects such as persuasive communication, design thinking, branding, leaderships, and continuing improvement processes. Thank you, Elsa, for this presentation today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you. And if any of you folks out there are like me, you've probably been watching more TV than ever during this year of forced containment, right? In doing so, I'm not a big TV person, but in doing so, you've probably stumbled upon some cool stuff. I stumbled upon a wonderful movie in a book that I read many, many, many years ago. The movie is called Radioactive, and probably you are already nodding your heads. And this was about the amazing Madame Curie. Madame Curie, along with her husband, Pierre Curie, if anybody is out there French, please don't hit me. I know I'm slaughtering French here. They discovered radioactivity while working at La Sorbonne in Paris. She was famous for her determination and her brilliance. Her intellectual capacity was something that had never seen before. And so much so that, think about this, fast forward to the early 1900s and boom, she is now the first female professor at La Sorbonne. Huge feat. The first day after some time off, and you can find out why she had some time off, she walks into her classroom and her students are all in awe. You could hear a pin drop. Their teacher had been awarded 2 Nobel Prizes, one in 1903 for physics and the second one in 1911 in chemistry. That woman was just in front of them. She opens a container with steaming hot water and asks, "Give me your best solution to keep this hot water hot longer." For the next 15 minutes, her students each spilled their brains explaining these super intricate processes and contraptions and gadgets, and they wanted to wow her, right? Well, after each one of them had spoken, she said, "I'd start by putting a lid on." Friends, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Some people call design thinking or solutions thinking as thinking outside of the box. Well, in today's session, we're going to discover that design thinking is actually more about exploring everything around the box and at times, discarding the box altogether. And some things just need to be done like that. Hi, everyone. My name is Elsa Velasco-Paul, and I am a proud part of the M&E Group. And just like Michelle said, this is a very hands-on experience. We're going to go through the foundational discussion, and we're going to show you the ABCs, the how, the what, and specifically the why are we talking about this. But we're also going to show you studios or real-life examples of what happens when. This is going to show you what needs improvement and what that improvement looks like. Now, to get the best use of your time, I suggest go get pen and paper, write down your questions, your thoughts, your comments, even your suggestions. And I want you to share them right here on the Q&A section or the chat right here. However, don't worry if you don't get all of your answers or something, any of your comments. Don't worry, because we're going to collect this and we will reply right after today. And of course, many of you've already connected with us on LinkedIn. We always, always love keeping the conversation going. If you haven't discovered that already, we're here thanks to a wonderful, wonderful partnership with some brilliant people. And that brilliant people, you already met one of them. That's Michelle, and it's the IEEE Computer Society. Michelle, Scott, Eric, Carrie, thank you so much for your invaluable support. Thank you also for the support team behind the scenes. Today we have Mike, our PM, on the Q&A support today. And thank you, of course, all of you for your great questions. Thank you also for all the connections that we've had on LinkedIn today. And time to get a little bit serious, folks. Or maybe not. As you can see here, this page is our humorous approach to saying, if you do need to let it use any of the information contained here, just let us know. Most of the time, we are more than glad to partner with you. So just reach out, make sure that we connect before utilizing the content for your next presentation. You know what? We always, always want to help you succeed, and we love partnering with our new friends. So what is this whole talk about? User centricity, customer centricity, solutions thinking. Well, hang on. I don't want to talk about the topic before knowing who I have in the room. I want to know about you so that I can tailor this experience to you. Michelle, can we get the poll going so that I can find out what stage in the career I have friends out here?
Sure. I've already said it, so hopefully the audience will see it soon.
Perfect. So this next poll that you're going to see here just says if you can click what stage in your career you're currently in. If I have my students here, my PhD candidates, please click over there. If you're entry level, good for you. Great job. If you've been in it for a little bit and you are now a team lead or you're supervising a group of people, good job. Man, being able to do that in these times, that's a big, big deal. For all my managers and my directors and C-suites, thank you so much for being here. And this is really, really going to make a difference. And for my retired folks, this is awesome. You're going to have so much fun. We do have because we have other categories, and I always want to make sure that I include everybody on the conversation. Michelle, you let me know when you think that we have enough answers from our friends.
Okay, let's give them like a couple more seconds just in case.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, I'll switch it over now.
Perfect. Beautiful. Oh, what a wonderful mix. What an amazing mix. Okay, this is wonderful. I love because I have a lot of folks that have what I call in the trenches management. So love it that my team leads and my managers, excellent. And I love who are my other. If you don't mind, I'm going off script here. Please let us know in the Q&A, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now I'm seriously intrigued. Mike, I know that you're probably going berserk over there, but I need to know these guys. What are you doing? Everybody wants to know now. While my friends type in and let us know what other means and what areas are taking care of their time right now, let me clear it up. Let's talk about what this whole conversation of innovation and customer centricity, what does this all mean? So when we talk about all of these concepts, everybody thinks when we say solutions thinking or this decision or design thinking, they're going to think more like, designers, color, format, if this is the first time that you're hearing about it. Well, hang on. You're not too far from the truth. Because number one, yes, design thinking is going to follow a creative, dynamic approach pretty similar to what you're going to see within designers, right? However, yes, on the second line, this process is going to live within a framework, a measure. It has to be an improved and replicable framework because we need to be able to use this as many times as needed. Before you think something else, design thinking is not like the new flavor of the month. Somebody went to a webinar and then came back. You know what? Design thinking is a hippie. It was born in the 1960s. Now, although you have heard from Tim Brown, the IDEO and the Stanford D School are the most associated with design thinking. The concept in itself, if you start reading about it, this goes way back to the 1959. I believe it was John E. Arnold that he used a design thinking concept in talk about solutions thinking in creative engineering. So this started actually within the world of creative engineering. We fast forward 1969, it's starting to spill over into engineering and other sciences like that. By 1980s, boom, this is fully human-centered design, and now we're into business management 101. How did this go so fast? It attracted people, my personal opinion, because of the elegance and the practicality, let's call it that way, of the approach. It uses design in the name because designers have something that is so key. They're very good at focusing on the user, on their needs and their wants. And yes, they're very different things, my friends. But it has also evolved from a range of different fields into a range of different fields. It's taking pieces from architecture, from engineering, from science, from business, but now it's also going into fields like hospitality and into medical design. Design thinking can also be applied to anything. And that's why I love David Kelly's structure when he said that design thinking, when it's applied right, and we're going to talk about it, it really changes the fabric of the organization in business. And that really makes a huge difference. I think it's wonderful. Let me give you a real life example so that you can see why this really works. Framing the problem appropriately is going to be really tricky, because to be able to be working within design thinking, we need to see things separate from our ideas and biases, right? Thinking outside of the box is a real challenge, because think about it, we have naturally developed patterns of thinking that are going to be modeled on the repetitive activities, commonly accessed knowledge. You brush your teeth, you walk out, things that you don't have to teach yourself every day. But that is where design thinking can help you break out from that. Look at this picture right here. Some years ago, many years ago, an incident happened where a truck driver, boom, 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 he saw that there was a truck, there was a bridge coming up, he miscalculated, he tried to pass under, boom, he failed, the truck was lodged firmly under the bridge. Well, the driver was unable to continue driving in or out. So the story continues that as the truck became stuck, it caused a massive traffic problem. So emergency people, engineers, firefighters, truck drivers, everybody came around to try to figure out a way to dislodge this truck that was causing this massive traffic lodge. The emergency workers were trying to figure out even do we have to take apart this huge truck? Everybody from their own area of expertise was trying to say, this is what we need to do. There was this teenager going by on his bicycle. He saw this, and he looked at the road, and then he just said, why don't you just let the air out of the tires? Everybody just looked at him, tested the solution, and the truck was able to drive free with ease. having only suffered, obviously, the damage caused by the initial attempt to pass under the bridge. That's an example of design or solutions thinking. We frame the problem appropriately, and it really works. However, it's tricky because to make it work, we need to see things really separate from ourselves. Now, the way that we do that is because we are able to access knowledge and we are able to surround ourselves with different frames and understand where this comes from. Now, what's the catch? Well, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Solutions thinking does take a little bit of practice, okay? Why? Because humans, we develop patterns of thinking that they are modeled, like we said before, on repetitive activities. These things, they assist us in quickly applying the same action or the same knowledge in similar or familiar situations. But they also have the potential to prevent us from quickly and easily accessing or developing new ways of seeing and understanding and solving problems. These patterns of thinking, they're often referred to as schemas. And they're organized sets of information and relationships between things, between information and actions that are simulated, boom, boom, and they're initiated in our minds when we find something outside that looks like it. For example, a single schema can contain a vast amount of information. There's a schema, for example, for dogs that encompasses, 4 legs, the little ears, teeth, the tail, the paws, and probably a relationship. I love them, I like them, or I don't. So when the environmental stimuli matches a little bit this schema, and even if this is very tenuous, for example, you see a cloud that looks like it, boom, my mind is immediately going to say, that looks like a dog. However, as these schemas are stimulated automatically, this can obstruct a more fitting impression of the situation or prevent us from seeing a problem in a way that will enable a new problem strategy. Innovative problem solving is also known as, thinking outside of the box or solutions thinking, because what we are doing here is we're taking a step back and we're recognizing there's a schema set here. I want to get out of there and look for something else. I want to look outside of the box. We benefit from solutions thinking approaches because we want to look for an answer that usually fixes something really, really complicated. To do that, we're going to work, obviously, for people within their social context. And we also want to make sure that we're operating in an experimental mode. That means we're going to test something. It might fail, or it should fail. We're going to test it again until we get to the right point. So that means ambiguity has to be in the mix. And that also means that the design that we put on there, they will be redesigned. Does that make sense? There is a little bit of a playfulness that we're going to find whenever we're talking about design or solutions thinking. We're going to talk about prototypes in a little bit. That's all that this is all about. Now that we're aware of what all of this is about, let's really talk about what does design, DT, or solutions thinking look like? Or out of the many, many phases, how do I do this? Well, you're going to find out there literature that is going to show you, maybe 3, 7, I've seen even 9 different stages or modes. Most of these variants of design thinking are going to be very familiar and very similar. They might change in the way that they combine some structures. Here, this one that you're seeing is the 5-phase model, and this is the one proposed by the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design, the same folks from Stanford. And this one is also called the D School. These 5 phases of design thinking are going to be empathize, and this is I am able to connect with my user as if I were the user. I'm going to be able to define as if I am the user's needs, the problem, their insight. Therefore, I can ideate by challenging what assumptions I have now as the person who is designing this, and create ideas for whatever solution really is going to address this situation for the user. Then I can start to work on a prototype. And this is very manual. This is the experimental mode that we were talking about. It is to start to create solutions that really fix that define phase that we talked about before. The testing part, frankly, it's one of my favorites because this is where we get to put all these prototypes into play and see, does it really address not the want, the need? And that's very, very key. It's very, very important to note that not any of these 5 phases, stages, modes, whatever you want to call it, they're not going to be sequential, okay? You're going to see it in the example that we're going to share with you of how we do it at the M&E group. They're not in a specific order. You can do empathize, define, go to ideate, and then go right back to need to go back to your customer and do empathize again, and then define, ideate, prototype. Something's wrong with my prototype and have to go back again. This is not so much about following the structure as much as being able to connect with the user, understand what's going on, why is it important, and then what needs to happen so that we can address it. Let's talk about that very, very first one, the empathize. I really, really like that one. Empathy provides the critical starting point for solutions thinking, because here is where we spend time getting to know the user, the customer, the client, and we understand what their need is and their want. The customer will say, I really want so and so and so. And if you are good at this, you're able to discover this want is really expressing another need. And that's where we want to go. Therefore, we can extract what the objective is going to be. So we observe a lot and we engage a lot with the people, but in their natural habitat. Probably one of the saddest parts of empathize is when people try to take people outside of where the situation is happening and bring them to their consulting firm area, for example. You just took people out of their natural habitat. That's not going to work because that's not where the situation is happening. We need to bring them back so that we can understand them on a psychological and emotional level. And during this phase, we very consciously, we take out our assumptions and gather real insights about the user. Empathy is very important because I want to really transpose myself. It's almost I empty myself and I am able to think, feel, and react as the actions of that other person. If not, then it becomes projection. And projection is a killer of any DT or solutions thinking project because all I'm doing is I'm masking my own ideas. And then that's one of the reasons why some of these projects and the solutions don't work, because there was a lot of projections or biases in this case. If I have a good empathize section, then I can move to my define, right? And define, as the name says, we've gathered all of our findings from the empathize phase. Then we can move to a good definition. Good definition is why. What's the customer's pain point? You know, what's the difficulties, the barriers? What is really going on that is causing enough of a challenge for them to want to move or to change from their current situation? Outside of that, do I see any patterns? And patterns are really key. What is the main customer problem that would really be most impactful, again, to the customer? Not the one that is repeating the most. It's the most impactful. By the end of this define phase, you will have a clear problem statement. And the way that we phrase this is we always, again and again, we want to frame it in terms of the user. So for example, I wouldn't say, I need to, I would say, the retired folks in the Tulsa area need so and so and so. Got it? Now, once we formulated the problem into words in a good structure, then I can start to come up with, yes, solutions, ideas. You know, how do I think I can address that? That's going to bring us on to, yes, stage 3. But hang on. Remember, I promised you that I was going to share some studios, some real life. Boy, do I have one for you. Ta-da! In a previous workshop, somebody asked me what the worst fatal flaw in design thinking was, in solutions thinking. You know, the most uphill obstacle, the one that you really can't recover from. I would have to say a bad definition stage, by far. When we don't understand what the end user's need is, oh my goodness, we spend an enormous amount of time, people, resources, fixing something that didn't need fixing. A good example is the 1985 New Coke. Okay, hang on. Yeah, I'm dating myself. I know this. But for anybody less than 40 here, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But the New Coke was the unofficial name for the reformulation in Coca-Cola back in May in 1985 by the Coca-Cola company. I think it was renamed Coca-Cola 2 in 1992. And by July of 2002, boom, discontinued. But why would you want to reformulate something like Coca-Cola? Because the results told them they had to. Hang on. By 1985, Coca-Cola had been losing an enormous amount of market share to diet soft drinks and other non-Coca-Cola beverages for many years. So Coca-Cola did what made sense. They went on a series of blind sip tests that indicated that the customers, they really liked the sweeter taste of rival Pepsi Cola. So what does Coca-Cola do? They reformulate. This kind of makes sense. No. Right after they reformulated, the American public's reaction was horrific. And that's putting it mildly. The company had to reintroduce the original Coca-Cola formula within 3 months, and they rebranded it as Coca-Cola Classic. The sales went right back up. New Coke was filed away, never heard again, except in cases like these as a cautionary tale of don't do it again. This is exactly where design thinking or solutions thinking is exceptional, because this is where we can help to uncover biases. For example, like looking for data that would confirm that we needed to change the formula to boost sales, as well as provide new insight into what was going on. Hey, maybe, just maybe, we really don't need to change anything at all? What if the tests are wrong? And I promise you, we're going to talk about this later on. Just hang on tight. I just wanted to show you why these first two phases are so key. Define and understanding your customer is absolutely important. Now that we have a good understanding, let's go to ideate, one of my favorite phases, because this is all about creating. The key word here is going to be creativity, but creativity that produces innovation. To make creativity flow, it needs to be a judgment-free zone, and judgment-free zone from ourselves and from others. If we're too self-aware, then it just becomes a repetitive of what is safe to talk. So you need to find a great facilitator, somebody that can also inject, boom, a sense of urgency so that we don't have too much time to think and too much time to be self-aware. There is a good understanding of my users' behaviors and needs. And here we want to challenge the norm and come up with new ideas. There are so many different ways that I could, frankly, I could have like a whole different webinar just on this section. There's different types of ideation. We can go from brainstorming, mind mapping, to body storming, like role playing, provocation. You can go to reverse thinking. You can go anything. I have tons and tons of examples. Like if you want a good resource, go and get the book called Thinker Toys. Thinker Toys, I want to say, probably has like 200 pages just of different activities that you can use just for this section alone. It is fun. It is easy to apply. And if you do have any more questions or you want to find out what to use, you know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Now that we have found out what is the best of the ideas that we come from, let's test it. But we want to test safe. And the way to do it is through a prototype. Prototypes are going to be based on everything that we did before, right? So we interviewed the user, we've defined the problem statement, and we came up with a potential solution. Because we put the user, the customer at the heart of the process, then we also need to test the design with the real user, right? I can't test it myself and say yay or nay because I'm biased already. Now, prototypes are great because we can do that without spending tons of time and tons of money. One of the key things that they can do, they can give you firsthand insight into how the user actually interacts with or reacts with the product. It can even tell you if there's any issues with however you are designing this. And, most importantly, it's also going to tell you if some of these improvements are going to have issues once you introduce you into the market. If I could say it simply, a prototype is going to be a super scaled down version of whatever process or product you want to make in the end. There's different types formed by fidelity, by interaction, or by the life cycle. And depending on where you are, you're going to be categorized into one of these. Most of the time, we're going to be in the quick prototype format, unless, of course, your organization is pretty massive. If we finish and we have a good prototype and it's working and it's telling us that it is hitting the mark, then we can move on to test. Testing and prototyping, in my opinion, they add a huge value to this designing process. And it's not only because it helps you to stay focused that this is all about the customer, and it's not about validating my own ideas and what I want to do. But, for those of you that don't know, I'm very business oriented. This just makes business sense. You're not going to be spending money where you're not supposed to. The earlier that you test your ideas, the earlier you can see design flaws, usability issues, and obviously find out if the market is just not ready for your product. You can have a fantastic idea, but the market is just not right for it. Just like in the Coca-Cola example, for example, it can also help you uncover unexpected insights that you were not even aware were part of the equation. An unbiased testing also helps you by seeing real users interact with the early version of the product, and it can also highlight issues that are really important if you have alternate products that are going to be connected to this one. So again, when do we test? Oh, you betcha, early and often. Early because it helps us tweak the product at points where it's not going to be too complex or it's not going to be too expensive. And often for exactly the same reason. Depending on resources, you can test, either remote or in person. Obviously, right now, there's a lot of remote happening on. And moderated, it depends on how much you want to be controlling the user's ability to work with the model. Now, one thing that I wanted to bring to you is how do you really use design or solutions thinking? In most of the sessions that we had before, our customers or our students always comment, what does this look like? Do you have an example of how do you apply this? How do you bring this to a smaller company? My company is not a 500 employee company, we're 20 or we're 100. How do I bring this? I got an example for you. The key thing that I like about this slide is because design thinking allows us to discover just this. Most of the time, we're looking in the right direction, we're doing the right things, but we're seeing them upside down. We're doing a knee-jerk reaction to fixing things before stopping to think if that is even the problem that needs to be fixing. Design thinking, for example, because it uncovers solutions and it helps us to see that there's other issues that we were not even aware of, it is able to bring in new perspectives. And it also gives us an access to the abstract. Here at the M&E group, we used a hybrid and we simplified it because we needed to use it very, very fast. So we brought it to the why, to the what, and the how. The why is we want to identify why this is important to the user or the customer, or why is this a problem? Why is this significant enough that for X person, they want to change from where they are? And remember, this could be me. This could be my coworker, right? The what section is going to be where I go to develop an empathic understanding of the person who is experiencing the issue. And then we start defining the problem that the team, the person, or the user is trying to solve. Here, I just want to have a very solid foundation in the context of the problem. And I need to be able to frame it so that we can start to move on and get some progress. So first thing here, identify the issue, where it's happening, and to whom it's happening. So once I move beyond that, I am able to figure out what is the consequence of this problem. Most of the time, we frame issues because we frame it as the consequence. That's not the right way. The right way is first we find out the why, and then we can see that the consequence is separate. So we end up splitting the why and the what in our case, because this model really helped us highlight our biases very, very clearly. In the beginning stages, we didn't have it that way, and our biases were creeping so much that the solutions were decent, but they were still not addressing the core issues, in the problems were coming back and back again. Believe me, until you make a conscientious effort to do so, your solutions are going to be plagued with biases. That's just who we are. Now, the last stage that we have is on the how, and here is where we get to work. And this is, I love it. I happen to love it because this is where we're fixing the issue that we've identified before. So this is about exploring, experimenting, and we're going to learn through making. We go after what happens to the user when the situation happens. But we're not going to do this as me, the leader, and the user. We do this as a solutions team. So that means the folks that are closest to the problem, and we also bring in people that have no relationship whatsoever. Do you guys know why? Because I need the teenager that was coming by with the truck. I need that fresh mind, that diversity, that is super, super key. At the same time, this is the part where I inject that sense of urgency, go, go, go. And I also need to have a green light for errors. And that's a very cultural thing in each company, because I need to be able to help people see that failure is needed and that we need to move and we need to produce something. So let's get to work. And let me show you a good example, one of my favorites, actually. If you've seen this before, you know what I'm talking about, Airbnb. Airbnb, if I'm not mistaken, was founded in Silicon Valley in 2008 or 9, but hardly anyone knew about it. Today, who doesn't know Airbnb, right? I think it's like in over 220 countries. Hey, and if I'm not mistaken, Airbnb went lock on the stock market this year. But bottom line, by the time that, by early when they came up in 2010, people were not booking on their site. These guys were valued at $35 to $52 billion on the secondary market. And they were getting ready to be launched in the market, but they were still not getting a lot of people on their site. The key to solving the problem of decreasing these booking figures was seeing things radically, but they had to also see them impartially from a customer perspective. What does the customer need? You know what it was? They just needed good, enticing pictures. That's why people weren't booking. They needed pictures that conveyed feelings of leisure, of fun, of happy times. The pictures that the owners of these properties were putting out were very factual, were very clean, and were very data-driven, but they were not conveying those feelings. So although the pictures were good, the customer, the user, needed something else. The Airbnb team took it upon themselves to visit all these hosts and take high-quality pictures that took those feelings and emotions. And you are right. As soon as the better photos were uploaded, boom, success was quick to follow, and the number of bookings skyrocketed from that point on. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's where design or solutions thinking really, really shines. But It doesn't work that way all the time. That's why we have to be very careful and pay attention to those fatal flaws that we talked before. Let me give you a quick list of what I consider are the key ones we want to pay attention to. Just like the bad pictures in the sense that they were not really doing the job. Some activities can kill a great solutions thinking initiative before it even has a chance to take off. So some of these fatal flaws are solutions that we developed before too soon, as in there is not enough time to prevent it, to use it, or when we develop a solution that is for the wrong problem, or when we develop a solution that is looking for a problem that I think exists. I want to confirm the solution for something that I think is happening, even if it's not. This is the number 4 is probably the most common, and I think everybody falls into this category. We love an idea. So we tend to push our idea into produce more data that validates our own. That's why we need, again, diversity. Number 5 is very, very, very common, very normal. We don't like to be ridiculed. So unless you have a very, very comfortable group, fear of ridicule or failure is a real deal. So you just need to be very conscientious and create spaces and systems that make sure that that is kept to a minimum. Paralysis by analysis, or just paralysis, not doing anything because it's too much. We just need to churn the data and find out. It can just really halt you to a point. Or when you just stay working with the same information that you have because you don't need more data. All of these are problems because what you see, the common thread here, is they are not allowing you to see beyond the obvious. And that's precisely what design thinking is not about. One of the key things about design thinking is that you really can use it every day. You're not going to see like a single book that is going to say, this is the real design thinking method. There's tons out there. This is more like an approach, like a cultural way that you can implement practically using whatever tools and measures. Some of my best ideas that I think are very key, there has to be a cultural change. To understand design thinking and implement it, you have to have an approach that is right down to the core. Companies need to be really, really committed. And when that happens, these solutions teams, these diverse teams, boom, they are really, really natural. The learning base just means that we embrace that there's going to be a lot of errors within the process of figuring out what works. And of course, it has to be customer-centric because it's not about the process. It's about the people. The people are the ones that make things work. Committing spaces and resources goes back to the first one. When a company is absolutely engaged and committed, design thinking absolutely, like Kelly said in the first slide, it really changes an organization. How do you successfully design think? These are some of my favorites. If you're really stuck with a problem, close your eyes, see the situation happening, and then insert yourself and see how you react with it. Interact with the situation, and you're going to be surprised of what you find out. Challenge also the way that it's getting solved right now and almost reverse it, see if instead of doing it this way, if you could do it the exact opposite way and figure out what happens. Diversifying is key. If you are addressing it with the same group of people, take that team out and bring a team that has never been challenged in working with this problem and see how they address it. It always brings new ideas. And obviously committing not only to new people, to a change, but also committing to watching for our own biases and to do something about it. Not doing something about it really doesn't work, right? Now, I know there's a lot of information here. I know that. I absolutely know that. The real power, the real success factor for processes like this is focusing on people. If we focus on this, it really, really helps you to find out how it can be fixed. When we try to validate our processes first and then mold people around it, That's exactly when things like the new Coke happens. The key word in this case was the sip test. Tests such as the Pepsi challenge were sip tests, and that meant that the drinkers were giving small samples, less than a can. And the problem was that sip test, because it was a small test, it didn't really let people drink as they would in real life. It was so sweet that people just rejected the taste of Coca-Cola, whereas Pepsi seemed a little bit better. Also, they were giving them the test samples in nondescript glasses. Well, it ends up that Gladwell discovered that, for example, 7-Up drinkers, they believed that a sample from a bottle that had a more yellowy label, people felt that it tasted, quote unquote, lemony, even if the flavor was identical. That's what I'm saying. Sensation transference is a real deal. It's people. We are people, and we react to situations. We can never, ever, ever fix things in a void. We have to keep them within the environment. Before this webinar, several of you reached out and asked me a great question. And they said, what do you do when you fix a problem and it happens over and over and over and over? And I wanted to keep the answer until today. And I said, it's because it's not the same problem. A problem, a case, a situation is going to be basically a convergence of people, environment, and the circumstance. Well, friends, people change. And when people change, the situation changes. Therefore, the problem statement in one way or another is going to change. That's why some things, even if we try to apply the same response, it's not going to work. The problem in itself has changed. We're trying to fix an old or wrong problem with the same solution. Today, we took a tour all the way through designer solutions thinking to understand the why, the what, and the how. We made a couple of pit stops to see in real life what design thinking looks like in action. We gave you some heads up, don't do this, or heads up, pay attention to this really works. And hopefully, I've whet your appetite towards going forward and talking more or even applying this in your institutions. Do you know how it gets really fun? Apply this in your life. We do that all the time, and it is so, so, so much fun. All in all, design thinking is really about the heart leading the head to use your hands wisely. Or like Madame Curie said, just put a lid on it. Do the obvious thing. Thank you, everybody. It's always my pleasure, and I love spending time with you. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, Elsa. We do have one question here. Let's see. Idealization phase. Do you have people work separately? There's evidence that brainstorming meetings are not very effective.
Yes. Brilliant. Yes. There's a lot of research. Back in the 1980s, brainstorming was developed, frankly, because we were trying to work together and create some cohesion. Nowadays, we've actually done it in a way of everybody works separate, write your stuff down, lock it, and then we come together in an anonymous fashion, and then we're able to explore anonymous ideas, let's call it that way, because to prevent groupthink. Yes, absolutely. But there's tons of books out there. Thinker Toys is a great one. And Blink, if you buy Blink, you can see also a lot of strategies to do that. And Dan Rome also has a lot of strategies of how to work within teams and to ensure that groupthink doesn't happen. Great question.
Great, thank you, Elsa. As of right now, I don't see any other questions, so it looks like we can wrap it up. Actually, there's another one just came in. Let's see. I see a lot of similarities between what design thinking and what artificial thinking is trying to do now. Okay, I guess that's just a question or a comment. Let's see.
I agree, absolutely.
Here's another one. How may I use this concept to innovate within research as a PhD student?
Perfect. Absolutely. Especially with research, because with research, unless you have an unbiased mind, you're going to be just churning the same material that has been used before. And sure, you're going to get you're going to become a PhD, but did you really do the best that you could? Nah, not really. If you can, let me see, what's the name? Connect with me on LinkedIn, because I'd love to help you with that. I've actually helped a couple of people where on their PhD work with this. It's one of my favorites. I was there, so I know what it feels like. Oh, thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. That was super sweet. Thank you, Gosday. Ideation phase. Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it. And again, like I was saying, if you have any questions, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Several of you have already done so, but we always have communications, and we actually have a couple of short live sessions that we do so that people can ask questions live to help during these weird COVID times. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey. That's super sweet.
Let's see. Do you know tools to apply DS on the ground?
I'm not sure I understand the scope of the question. As in, apply design thinking, like on an everyday. Maybe if it's like on an everyday basis, again, I would go, if you just want the tools and you already understand the phase, probably Blink is a great starter point. One of the best is the IDEO website. They do an amazing job. I like to stay very much engaged with a group of people that have very little to do with a group of electronics in that segment, because I love how different sciences, like for example the hospitality group and even the medical section, how they are approaching solutions thinking. It's very different, but I love it because they challenge me onto how I used to approach solutions thinking. So get outside of what we know or where this came from initially, user-centrics or UX, and go to other fields that have nothing to do with it. That's where the real money is.
I want to mention, I think the individual said that it is a IT world.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to kind of make sure you know that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly why we want to stay out of it, because if not, we're churning the same ideas, right? So let's learn from the hospitality folks and, even some of the medical field. The medical field is killing it with the new techniques that they're using within DT.
Let's see, here's another one. Design thinking seems like it would be useful in developing user interface, like creating mock-ups as prototypes. Comments?
Oh, absolutely. Like somebody said it before, Nihad, you said it perfectly. That's actually where it started. And it started, I want to say it very carefully. That's where it lives very, very comfortably. Let's call it that way. So you guys are going to find it, and the whole UX world is going to be, and let's think it this way. We can get funky here because design thinking is almost like the starter point, and then you go agile. And, it gets really, really complicated. But I believe that because of the way that IT works, it makes a lot of sense. But because we want to challenge ourselves and go a little bit outside of our schemas and the way that we think, we want to explore other sciences and other disciplines to really be diverse, Otherwise, we're doing the same thing that we're saying here not to do, right?
Great. Here's another question. With respect to the question of brainstorming, with respect to the question of brainstorming, do you propose that the team will brainstorm, then everyone will work alone on the idea discussed in the team, and then get together again after the idea were processed by everyone alone?
Yeah, I have a cool exercise that I developed because I had a lot of people that they didn't want to introduce their own idea because they felt silly, right? So if some of you don't know it, I'm an attorney by training, right? So what I devised was an activity that was, I will present somebody else's. I will be somebody else's attorney. Everybody wrote their idea as clear and as explicit as they could, no name, they put it in a box, and then people got to pick one, make sure that they understood it, the best of their knowledge, and then they got to defend that one. And that's how we picked at the end, the pros and cons. So you ended up defending an idea that wasn't even yours, but people were able to do it with an unbiased attitude. That is a great exercise in it, and it tends to bring better ideas than just people not wanting to ruffle feathers. Let's call it that way.
Okay, great. Here's another question. What if you always have the same people coming up with with solutions? How do you encourage other people to step in and step up?
Oh, on purpose. You go and pick people on purpose that have never been invited. That's a great question. I love that one. You do have, the professional, the professional participatories, and I love them, but you're churning the same ideas. So on purpose, I just make smaller groups, and I invite people that have probably never been. For example, in the company, we bring CNC folks that have never been inside of a meeting room, and it's brilliant. I bring students, I bring interns, I bring retirees, anybody that has nothing to do, and that's where the real money comes from. Great question, Carla. I like that.
Great. Do you want to wait for a couple minutes for some additional questions? As right now, we don't have any other questions. I think you pretty much answered, and thank you to Michael for helping us to answer the questions that we have.
Thank you, everybody. And again, we are absolutely available on LinkedIn. You can find me as Elsa Velasco Paul on LinkedIn. And any questions, we're always here. Please be safe and have fun. Design thinking, solutions thinking is really a way to approach life. And it will really make your life so much more fun and creative. And when creativity hits, you know what? It really becomes something that you want to enjoy. Connect with me. I always love talking with smart people. And all of you seem super, super smart. I want to learn from you. Have an awesome, awesome week.
Great. I just want to mention thank you again, Elsa, for this informative presentation. And I would also like to thank everyone for attending. I wanted to mention that our next Build Your Career webinar series is, we have another one for tomorrow, October 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the Fantastic Five, the 5 soft skills every technical professional should develop by Susan K. Kathy Land, U.S. Department of Defense U.S. Department of Defense and Missile Defense Agency. Our next distinguished lecture webinar series will be held on the 15th of January at 2 p.m. Eastern on any operational recovery framework for cyber reliance presented by Cyril. I'm gonna butcher the last name on Wibogo, Director Artificial Intelligence blockchain and cyber security. Registration for these upcoming events are now open. We will be sending you a link to these future events along with the slides and recordings of this webinar. Thank you again, everyone, and have a safe and wonderful day.
Thank you.